is going on, everybody? It's Colin here. We have Kris Manabo on the other line, one of my really good friends for a long time. We're going to start some video series here, basically, going over a few things at the beginning here, just to let everyone learn a little bit more about ourselves, more about Kris, more about myself, kind of how we met, where we ended up, and where we're going. Before I guess we get too deep into everything, it is April 17th right now, and if you're watching this in the future, the significance of that is
COVID-19.
Yeah, exactly. So full quarantine in effect, social distancing in effect. So we are doing this remotely, obviously. But yeah, we've just got a bit of time here, and we'll talk a little bit about ourselves, and hopefully everyone can learn something. So maybe just to start off, Kris, how did we meet? How long have we known each other for?
Well, we go way back since junior high, right? I think we met at grade 9 or grade 8. No, grade 9.
Yeah, it must have been grade 9.
Right? JD Bracco, Edmonton, North
Alberta.
Side.
Yeah. So since grade 9, so that's roughly, well, we graduated 2000. Oh man, it's been a long time.
What would have been 2003?
2003.
Would that have been 2003?
Yes, 17 years.
Wow. Yeah, we're
years.
old.
Yeah, definitely. So that's it's been a while, obviously. So why don't we start off? We've got a bit of a segment here. This is not just us going to be rambling about ourselves. We've got some things off camera that'll make it a little bit more interesting. So I've got some snacks here. Specifically, it's picked out by Kris. Kris, what's the significance of these snacks?
So these snacks are from Philippines, and it's something that I grew up eating, and I wanted to get Colin to try some snacks, like 10 snacks from my childhood, and I'm sure he's had some of these like in the past when he came over.
Looking at them, I've tried one or two, so I'm excited to eat those again, and there are a few that I haven't tried, so I'm sure it'll be a good experience.
Yep. And then Colin in return gave me some snacks as well. Like he's got 10 snacks from Japan, courtesy of his wife helping him out. Yeah, I'm excited because I have no idea what I'm looking at, but
so that'll be
I don't think Colin either.
That'll be the interesting point, I guess, on your side, because I chose them out, but obviously I don't speak fluent Japanese, so I'm not exactly 100% sure what all of them are. So they might be edible, they might not be. We'll see if you make it to the end of the video.
Well, either way, we're gonna do like a Q&A, sort of getting to know each other / food review.
For sure.
I mean, these are picked up at your local H Mart. So I mean, we're not sponsored, but like you guys are more than welcome to, especially some of the ones that we tried. If you really like them, we'll let you know. It's an H Mart.
Sure, it's true. Or T&T. Probably you can get them at both.
Yeah.
Or whatever Asian supermarket you have in the area.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's grab our first snack, I guess, and maybe we'll jump into the beginning portion. Unless there's something else you want to cover before we get there.
No, I think let's get started. I'm really excited to eat some of these snacks.
I don't know which one I'm going to go with first, but I have them sort of organized by size just because they're standing up. So,
you know what? I was actually going to start off with the biggest one. So you go first.
You have the smallest one, so we can go reverse.
Okay. So you'll go small, I'll go biggest.
So maybe if you can just show me which one you're going with.
Okay. So I have, this one has no English letters.
Nice.
So, oh no, it's called N chips.
Delicious. They look interesting. They look like a mix between Doritos and like Chex Mix, or like sort of like cereal.
I think so. I mean, I don't need, it looks, okay, these guys look like they're pizza people. But I don't know. Those are hats, I think.
We'll have to get Joy to translate everything at the end of the video. And we'll figure it out.
Maybe put it in a subtitle.
We'll put it in the post. And then I've got toasted wheat cake. But it says the flavor is ube. What's ube?
Ube is, it's basically purple yam. And that one is called polvoron. And it's it's something that my mom used to make for like as a treat, and we would sell it
Oh,
to
really?
the schools. So
Nice.
that one's a really good treat.
Well, this will be the first one that I try. So I guess while we eat these, the first thing I want to start off with. So we met in grade 9. Do you remember? Do you remember how we met? Because I do. I don't know if we have the same memory, but I definitely remember how we met.
Okay, so FYI, none of these questions are prepared. Literally, Colin's asking me this as we go. And so with junior high, how we first met. Okay, this is from my recollection.
I'll tell you
I
mine
was
afterwards. If you remember yours, I'll tell you mine afterwards.
What I remember was I brought a box of Beyblades in class, and I think Colin reminded me of this. Like I said, like, oh, he was wondering what that was, and I was like, oh, it's just a puzzle or something like that. But it was really Beyblades that I brought. Like, I don't know why I brought it to class, but it's a box of Beyblades, 2 of them, and I was really excited to play with this toy. And then partly the conversation turned into like, it's called Hamtaro, which is an Asian like anime show about hamsters. And Hamtaro came out on YTV during the summer of 2000, like 2000, has to be like 2001 or 2002, and it
Probably
was
around
just
that time.
everywhere. Yeah, and it was just like something that I don't know how the conversation came up, but we literally talked about anime hamsters and Beyblades.
I remember that. I remember it was actually after seating arrangement. It was switched. The seating arrangements in class
Oh
were
yeah.
switched, and we ended up sitting close to each other. And I remember
Yes.
seeing that box. And you're right. The one thing that you said was, "Oh, it's a puzzle." I was like, "Okay." And then I think you were just being careful. You didn't want to just out say, "Oh, it's Beyblades."
Right.
And then we started talking about anime. And then as soon as as soon as we figured out that we were on the same sort of like interest train, is when you busted the box open and
Yeah.
like showed me what was inside, which was Beyblades, which is basically our very first like the thing that we latched onto as an interest together, which we can talk about
That's
a
for
little bit
sure.
more here. But I tried your ube snack. It's
Oh,
really interesting. It's like a really dry, flaky cake. I thought it was gonna
yep.
have more of like a dense consistency, but it like sort of falls apart in your mouth. But the flavor is really good, and it's like less yummy than I would have expected, and more of like a
Yeah.
weedy, but it's super delicious.
Okay, good. I guess I'm gonna try mine.
Yeah.
This one. Okay. Oh, that's good. That's definitely fishy. It actually reminds me a lot of bugles. You know, the ones that you put on your fingers.
Oh, yeah.
It's got the same texture, but this one is cheesy and salty and very crunchy. Oh man, this is good. Thank you.
I want to
Like,
reach through and just like
just pick
take
one
one,
out.
but
Here,
it
have
doesn't
some.
work that way.
Oh, this is so good. Okay, this is off to a good start. I'm glad that we both like each other's snacks. I mean, some of this we didn't really pick out to hurt each other, except there's this one that
Just
Colin
one.
picked.
I picked one
Just
to
one.
hurt you.
That's okay. It'll be an experience regardless. We'll save it for last. Okay. So what's the next one? I'm gonna grab my second snack here.
Sure.
Oh,
This one I know. This one you'd know as soon as you opened it, even if you didn't look at it. This is a very, very, very garlicky corn snack.
yeah.
If I remember correctly. And these
So
are
that's boy bawang, and
yeah.
it's basically like you can find them anywhere in the Philippines. Like it's a really popular Filipino snack food. And yeah, Colin's not kidding. As soon as you open those things, he hits you in the face.
I could
So
feel
I'm
that
gonna
you were talking the entire last snack. I was thinking about it. Mouth was drooling.
open this one up. This is Pororo, the little penguin,
So that
ice
was a
cone
mistake.
snack.
I accidentally grabbed that one. It was supposed to be all Japanese snacks, and my wife is Japanese. This one's a Korean one. It's okay. Don't worry about it. While you do that, I want to talk about just again, more things while you open it, some more things that we sort of latched onto, I guess, growing up, and how we sort of connected as individuals, because that's sort of what kept us sane, I guess, all through that last year, junior high, high school. Obviously, it can be like a really interesting time for a lot of people. It can be hard or easy. It really depends on the person, but it's interesting regardless. And so Beyblades anime, it was a big thing right at the get-go. Dragon Ball Z,
Japanese culture.
Japanese culture, yeah, it was
Yeah.
obviously a really big one. So the Beyblade anime, Dragon Ball Z, like Yu-Gi-Oh was a huge one
Yes.
at that
Yep.
time. And so a lot of these things we really just sort of latched onto, and we were, I guess, comfortable with each other to be able to like be into these sort of these Japanese cultural phenomenons that, I guess at the time, nerd culture wasn't nearly as big as it is now. Nerd culture was
Right.
definitely on the down low. And so it was
It was.
nice.
It wasn't socially acceptable.
It wasn't nearly as socially acceptable. And so it was nice to like really latch and to connect with somebody who is interested in the same things. And that's sort of one of my, the best memories of growing up is just having somebody who just understood, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
understood the same sort of interest that I had, and we could really talk about it. And another one of those major interests that'll be a really big underlying theme throughout this video. And if you're paying any sort of attention behind Kris, you may have figured out what it is. And
Yeah.
that's Lego. Lego is another big one that we really connected on growing up.
Right.
I think more so in high school than in that junior high year. Really, when the Bionicles phase
Oh
came,
yeah.
those were really big
Yeah.
ones. But yeah, that's some of the interest points, I guess, that we sort of connected with growing up, and that's how we became such good friends at that time.
Well, with our backgrounds, like we pretty much came from two different social backgrounds where like you were trying to figure out who you were, and I was trying to get to know who I was in terms of like who my circle of friends were, who I was trying to trust. And I remember like pretty much like these toys or these shows that we had similarities with. It was basically our escape.
Yeah.
Right. So we basically built our own culture of culture, and in return, like we got some friends. We did have like another friend who was with us, and basically like we were the trio. And like because back then it wasn't cool, like in quotation, it wasn't cool to like these things. It was difficult, right? Like we both were trying to figure out where we fit in, especially in junior high,
Right.
more so. And I mean, like kids would struggle with this too. Like we both struggled with figuring out our identities and having the self-confidence to express ourselves.
Yeah.
So it was great to have a best friend who can actually fill in that that niche, like where you're trying to figure out like, oh, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just nice to have other people that are just similar to you, right? Like people who have the same interests. You just feel a lot more comforted in being surrounded by those people and feel like you can get through anything when you don't have to stress about, everything just on your own. So it's definitely good. How's the snack?
The snack, it's really good. It's actually it's very milky.
Milky? Like a creamy center? Like how is it? Is it in the middle
creamy,
or what is it?
Yeah, it's got that that strawberry ice cream texture. It's actually like weird because it's like dry ice cream, but the cone is it's like a cone, and it's good. It's enjoyable. Now, I always with ice cream, I always wonder like the bottom tip is always the best. It's like having a drumstick.
Yeah.
You know how all the chocolate collects at the bottom. I wonder if this will be the same thing.
Is there any down there? Is there any at the bottom? Does it look like?
No, it's just a cone. It's actually hollow.
Disappointments.
But it's really good. Like these.
Which one did you like between the two?
I like the chips so far. Yeah, the chips is definitely just the flavor.
I think we have similar snacking interests as well. Like just looking at what you've picked up and what you really like savory. salty, crunchy. Like
Yes.
that's sort of what I'm into as well. So
Okay, good.
it'll be interesting as we go through to see how everything was. Um, so after I guess like junior high, there was like a really interesting, I guess, sort of period where um, I actually moved away pretty quickly after high school. So we went through the high school times. We built a lot of Lego. It sort of
Yeah.
like solidified our like our friendship and our interests and stuff like that. But I guess being like 17, 18, you're still so young. And now that I look back on it, there's
Sure.
so much decisions that I maybe would have done differently. But I guess in like hindsight, I'm thankful that it didn't, because it all worked out for the best, which is really cool. But what did you decide you wanted to do in terms of like schooling afterwards? Like maybe tell people like what you focused on while I pick another snack.
Well, with the when we graduated from high school, I think we were both trying to figure out what we wanted to do, and like the best part is we worked together, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of we had a moment to kind of ask each other for direction and advice.
Yeah.
And I know you took one of my question was going to be about how you decided to go to Vancouver. But for me, with my decision, I just kind of chose what was safe, to be honest with you. With my background, Filipino, like my parents have this this I guess expectation where they wanted a better life for us, especially for me and my sister, and we wanted to be successful. So I couldn't get into architecture, so I ended up taking materials engineering, which didn't work out. But while all this was happening, Colin and I were still in Edmonton working at Walmart.
Sure.
So
Walmart
like
electronics together.
yeah, exactly. So I was working and saving up for school, and I was working with him, and basically like my goal for school was to get into architecture, which I eventually did, but that's a long story. Like I really liked architecture. But yeah, like with you, I mean, you had a bit of a big decision to make on your end too. Like Vancouver's always been something that came up, which is surprising. And yeah, like you had to make the decision to go to Vancouver Arts,
Yeah.
School of Art.
So, just to backtrack a little bit, both of us were really heavily into arts growing
Yeah,
up. That was another big thing. Drawing, anime, but just art in general was always a really big part of our interest, I guess, which is pretty cool. So yeah, you decided you wanted to do materials engineering and like more architecture side of things, where I did something a little bit more traditional in the arts, where it was digital animation and graphic design.
yeah.
And so there was a time where the Art Institute of Vancouver, which is the school that I went to, came to our high school, and I did a presentation in our art class. And so I wanted to do something artsy. I wanted to do something at a school that was, I guess, a little bit more focused on the arts, which Edmonton didn't specifically have. And so when I looked at it, it was either Toronto or Vancouver, really, in terms of the choices. So it was a really interesting decision. I think it was more, in hindsight, now that I think about it, it was more just to make a decision, just because I didn't know. Like when I really think back on it, I just didn't really know what I wanted to do or why I wanted to do it. Like I didn't have a good foundation as to what I should be doing with my life. I didn't have any real pressures from like my parents or outside forces to like guide me in any way. It was always just like do what you want, which is like I guess a blessing and a curse at the same time, because I ended up going and really hating what I did, which was moving to Vancouver, which I loved, but taking digital animation, which I hated. The graphic design and everything else alongside of it was really great, and it's skills that have become incredibly useful for what we do. But yeah, in hindsight, it's a really interesting decision because, again, I feel like I just sort of jumped into it head first just to do it, just to appease, my parents being like, okay, well, I made a decision, like I'm gonna go do it. I guess moving out of the city was easy too, because you just don't have to deal with questions. You can just do whatever you have to do. And it was,
Right.
yeah, it was interesting. Like again, in hindsight, I would probably have done something different, but it is what it is. And a lot of good memories and friendships came out of it though. So I'm happy it happened.
Well, with the digital animation aspect of it, like obviously, like whenever you do something and you find things that you don't like about it, what were some things that you found out? Like why speak so like hateful of it? Like it sounds like you had a terrible experience.
Yeah, so something that I found out while doing any artistic endeavor is that I'm really impatient. First and foremost, I have a short attention span. So whenever I do something artistic, I want to sit down, I want to put everything into it, and then I want it to be the best that I can, and then I want it to be over as soon as possible. It's funny, I don't enjoy the process of certain artistic things as much, and as other artistic processes, I do enjoy the actual process. But I found out specifically in animation, the incredible tediousness of that in it. So you basically draw an image, and then you draw the same image almost exactly, just ever so slightly off. And you just keep doing that over and over and over again to make an animation, obviously. And so that we did 2D animation first, and that was the first like red flag where I was like, man, I just don't like doing something over and over and over and over again. I'd rather just focus on, say, like a painting or something and just do it really well, and that's the one piece, and then I can just display it or whatever. The animation or the 2D animation, drawing it over and over again was so tedious. And all the other courses that I was doing, I was, getting A's and blah, blah, blah. And 2D animation was the first course that I failed because I couldn't get around it. I just couldn't get my head around it.
Yeah.
Eventually took it again and passed, whatever. And then started on 3D animation, which is better in a sense that I don't have to physically draw and animate each scene. You can make the model. I really enjoyed, making models, texturing it, working with Photoshop, working with Maya 3D Studio. Again, the animation portion of it though is just very time consuming, where you're just tweaking little things over and over and over and over and over again. And so, yeah, I just found out that that's just not what I'm looking for in an artistic career. And so I ended up just gravitating more towards things like, I think video editing was always really fun for me. I enjoyed working with Photoshop. I enjoyed, again, like graphical design and working with like Illustrator, stuff like that, instead of having to do the same thing over and over again.
It's interesting that you pointed out the patience, because like between us two, like knowing you right now, you're more patient than I am. So it's definitely.
It depends on what it is.
Huh?
I think it depends on what it is, and I think my wife would say the same things, that I'm incredibly patient, and my parents would probably tell you the exact opposite, that I'm the most impatient person you ever meet. So it really depends on what it is and the situation and who I'm with. So.
Well, with the aspect of creating something and the tediousness of it, right? Like there must be like a sense of accomplishment once you get it done. So like, did that ever, like, was that the one thing that you just focused on when you were doing something like this? Like, doing something over and over again, were you just hoping that it would just finish, or were you actually excited for the finished product?
So I was always excited for the finished product, and I hated the process when I was doing animation. If I'm working on something different, if I'm working on something like a painting, if I'm working on something like a graphical piece, because I go from a blank canvas to a finished piece, and in between, there are just layers of progress. So in a painting, it's like very abstract, and it starts getting more detailed, and it just comes to life. Whereas for me, in animation, the model's already done, it looks awesome. And so the animation is just slight movements. That's the only thing that changes. So really it's just the movement that you are progressing through at the end of the day. And that just wasn't exciting for me. The things that get me excited are going from nothing to a something. And so that's why the actual modeling, the texturing, the making that one thing look really cool was, what got me excited, but the animation aspect never did. Also,
I'm gonna go pick out a snack too. I didn't get one.
Snack. I ate this. I just ate this.
You did?
Yeah. I don't know where the front is. I don't know what this is.
It's supposed to be a cashew stick.
Have you had these?
Yeah. They're like, they're supposed to be crunchy and then powdery in the middle.
Crazy powdery. I
Yes.
opened it and it got everywhere, and I bit into it, and it just like exploded like sawdust in my mouth.
But
I'm not
we
gonna lie,
usually,
this isn't my
they're-
favorite snack I've ever eaten.
it's messy. I should have prepared you. It's basically like when we were in when I was a kid, what we usually do with it, because some of these are like, this isn't obviously made fresh, but if they were made fresh, I would open one up and just blow it to
Uh,
my cousins, and
oh,
it's the funniest thing.
they don't like cap it on either end. It's weird. It's like
No,
just powder. Like I opened it and it fell out from both sides.
yeah,
What
it's
an
it's a bit
interesting
messy.
decision.
Okay, I got Chip Star,
Yeah, chip stuff.
and it's interesting because the opening is at the bottom, actually not at the top,
Ah,
and
the clickbait up there.
potato chips. There's Japanese people like potato chips. Hey, potatoes is a big thing for them.
You like potato snacks, yeah?
So these are like Pringles, like you were saying. These are Pringles.
If you had to relate
What?
them to anything in like North American culture, Pringles would be the closest.
Gotcha. Nori Shio. I don't know what that is.
Nori is seaweed, shio is salt. So it's seaweed salt flavored.
Mmm. Wow. Man, these are flavorful. I can definitely taste seaweed and salty. It's so subtle, but the emphasis is a potato. Like, these are better. These are better than
Triangle one?
Pringles.
Or better than Pringles, really.
Yeah,
Better than Pringles?
better than Pringles. But still, I'm still putting the triangle. I have to find out the name of that one. That sounds so good.
We'll make sure it's edited in post for you.
Thank you. So good.
So I know that there was an interesting point in our life where you and I actually not only went our separate ways in terms of schooling, but we had kind of a fallout in terms of like friendship as well.
Yeah.
Correct? So it's a pretty big time frame. It's close to 10 years, which is not significant, right? So maybe we can talk about kind of what we did in that time frame, because there's a lot that happens individually that helped us grow as people, I think.
Yep.
That allowed us coming back together to be possible. So it was pretty close to right after college, correct? So we went through college fine. Everything was good. We were in different cities. We didn't see each other as much. Obviously being different cities. And when I came back, I would normally hang out with my family and my girlfriend, obviously. And so after college, there was just, again, this weird fallout for whatever the reason was. So what was like what do you remember, like the first sort of solo adventure that you sort of went on, I guess?
It's funny how you say that, because the reason why I laughed was Colin and I were actually, before we the fallout, I guess, like we could even call it dark ages, where we lost touch with each other. Hey, what snack are you having there?
Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. We were working on like almost an anime show together. So we had these characters that we have as nicknames, and it's almost like our alter ego. And we designed this back in high school. So the solo adventure is almost like our individual story arcs, where in the story itself, we had a season where we both separated and went on our own solo adventure. And I think it's funny how like a story that you came up as friends became almost like a reality, where in the story itself, I believe we had a disagreement, strong disagreements on viewpoints, and we just ended up going separate ways just because it was better that way, right? Now, with my first solo adventure, obviously it was definitely in college, where I think not having Colin around was different because he was my only friend, right? At the time, I also had my other best friend, Aldrin, and both of us went to the same school. And it's funny how life puts relationships to a test, because
Sure.
you as an individual, how you react with relationship is pretty much how you are going to be shaped, like how your character is going to be shaped throughout your life. So I had to go experience making new friends, really good friends, and trying to figure out my individualism and who I really was, whether it was going to be Kris, the architect, Kris, the party guy, or whoever, right? So I had a bit of a transition from, sorry, I shouldn't say transition. I had a bit of an identity crisis because I was rediscovering who I was before I didn't have my friends,
Right.
my current friends who previously determined my character, like who I was. Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of like school, obviously did whatever college people do, party, stay up late nights. And actually this was probably like one of the important things where I got like all the fun out of my system, which is yeah, it's just, I did a lot of crazy things. Crazy is putting it lightly, but I did try to figure out who I was. And, you know, like emotionally, it was definitely a roller coaster. Like there was a lot of things that you as a, I guess in your 20s, that's what you do. You figure out who you are and trying to figure out where you fit in this world.
It's true.
Right? Like,
I
I mean, even with,
sorry, I know that I mentioned that it was like college and then we sort of split, but it was kind of at the end. So you're right. There's a bit of a transition there. And it started the same thing. So for college, I was trying to figure who I was in terms of like work, in terms of like friends. Obviously, I just left my best friend to go to a different city. I made a bunch of new friends who are now a huge part of my life. And so it really divided me in that sense as well. But yeah, really just finding yourself as an individual in those early 20s is an experience that you definitely can't prepare for. And I wish that older me could just tell that person that it's going to be okay, because it really stresses you out. Like I was so, even just going back to the college thing, I was so stressed out. Like I actually didn't even finish my college degree. Right? I actually dropped out before I got all my credits because I just couldn't stand what I was doing. Which I don't even actually, in this day and age, I think is awesome, because I didn't find any use for the animation side of things, which is where the rest of my course was going. But I learned so much about like photography, videography, graphic design, traditional arts, digital art like painting and stuff like that, that is so useful that we utilize like now. So I'm so glad that I went through the experience. But it's just funny because at the time, dropping out was like the biggest deal of my life.
yes.
And it was stressful emotionally. It was stressful because disappointment from people in my life, and my parents and stuff like that. My friends who finished and then went on to work in the industry. It's so funny that you were just saying that, just trying to find yourself in those times. So yeah.
Well, with you dropping out, that's an interesting point, because like for us, like obviously looking back, it's probably not a big deal now, but with you dropping out, like what did you feel at that moment? Did you feel any sense of failure, or like what was going through your mind, like dropping out?
I'll tell you right after I tell you about these snacks. What's your next snack?
Oh, mine is going to be, I'm going to go with this one. I have no idea. A Toy Story?
I think it's just, just branded that way. It's like Hello Panda. It's like a cookie,
Yeah.
a cream or like chocolate filled cookie.
Vanilla? No, sorry. This is strawberry. Why did I say vanilla? Strawberry with a pastry on the outside.
Yeah.
I got the scary one. I got the one from Goosebumps.
Oh, what the?
The puppet. Oh.
And I'm going with dried mangoes. I mean, Not much to say about dried mangoes, but they're delicious, obviously.
It's good. I'm glad you like those. Those are the actual Philippine brand.
Yeah, I see
Like,
that.
not that you pick up from Superstore or like the dry goods stores.
Nope, these are actual product of the Philippines, which is delicious. So yeah, there was definitely a sense of, and that's the stress I was talking about. I wished I could just tell my previous self that it was going to be okay, that it wasn't worth stressing about. And I think that's like most people in life. Like you blow things out of proportion in the moment, and then afterwards you're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, right? But there was obviously a lot of disappointment that a lot of feelings of disappointment that I put on myself, thinking that I wasn't able to finish something that was viewed as super important. Schooling, obviously, was taken very seriously by a lot of people. Parents obviously do their best to, give you an upbringing in life so that you can go to school, right? Like you even
Right.
mentioned, your parents obviously like they came from the Philippines with you. Like you moved when you were like 5 or 8 or something like that, correct? And their goal was to be able to like send you to school. And so my parents obviously didn't move from a different country, but their goals are similar. They want to provide for their children so they can go to school. And so it's just this big like thing that society puts on your head. Basically, it's like go to school, finish it, and like be successful. And so not finishing felt like a major failure. And having to face my parents about the decision of dropping out was a huge moment for my life. And yeah, it definitely sucked. It was definitely stressful. I remember the phone call. I remember exactly where I was living. I remember the phone call. I was like in the hallway and just like calling them and telling them what was happening. And I could just tell like over the phone that, they were saying, whatever you choose is like the right choice, but they're obviously disappointed. So it sucks.
I did go through the same thing too, but like I think mine was more of my own decision and a mistake. That, I mean, at the end of the day, these mistakes that we make, these things that we consider are like mistakes, our choices are pretty much shape us, right? Like with you dropping out, it sounds like it's probably the best thing that happened to you, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're happier,
And that's
right?
the thing is like, again, if only there was a way to like travel back in time and just tell myself that was the best choice, like, then I wouldn't be so stressed about it at the time. But really, yeah, it's just, it shapes you in certain ways, but you just have to let things go and do what's right for you. You got one life. Like, don't waste time if you know it's not right, like don't waste time on it, obviously, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
and I think that's going to be an interesting topic after we get back to us meeting back up later on in life, which I think is will be really fun to talk about. But yeah, so like what happened after the college years for you? Like
Well, I
what was
think
going on in your life? I wasn't here. I wasn't here for it. So
with the college thing, that was actually with college transitioning over. That's when I met like my current life partner, Colleen.
right,
Um, and actually, if it wasn't for Colleen, I met her in church. Just a little bit of background. Met her in church, and at that time, I was still going to college, and she was about to go to college as well. So we're kind of like trading places.
yeah,
But if it wasn't for Colleen, usually I would have my wingman help me out. And I think at some point you did help me, right? I remember in college you helped me out with a project because
yeah. There
you
was
were helping me render stuff.
there was still some stuff that we worked on together. Yeah, that was on the earlier portion of it. I think I can't
Yeah,
remember specifically, but
yeah. For me, architecture was 3 years,
yeah,
so I goofed up, and it was really strong lesson because like when you before we disconnected, I ended up going through the same similar motion where um, I messed up. Now I had to live with the consequences, so I had to take an extra year. And during that extra year, that's when I met Colleen. So
right.
she helped me do my projects, like a lot of the final projects and presentation. She was definitely my partner,
Nice.
and that hardship and that time frame together really solidified our relationship
Right.
because she saw me at my worst. Like I don't know if you knew this, but like my final project in architecture, I actually didn't go home for 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
I lived in Nate. Like I literally, I rendered at the HP Center
Yeah.
and slept on the couches. And the only reason why I got through it was my dad worked for Nate. So
Oh,
he was one of the power engineers that took care of the building.
yeah.
So every other day he would check up on me and drop me off some new clothes.
He'd like
So
poke you on the couch to make sure you're alive still?
basically,
Yeah.
he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" So then he'll drop off food, and I would take a shower and fresh clothes and take a shower at the gym. And yeah, like just basically that was my routine for 2 weeks. And my project was fantastic. Colleen would visit, and yeah, like so that was like basically part of that. And then
Before you go too far, what was your final project? I've never seen it. I wasn't here. I never even got to experience it. We've worked on so many projects together, but I never knew what your final architecture project was.
final architecture project was supposed to be Nate of the future,
Okay.
or like part of Nate. So it was the architectural school.
Okay.
So I got to design like a future architectural school.
Nice.
And basically I based it off this architect who did a lot of crystals.
Okay.
And basically like it was a crystal building. So my building looked like a spaceship. So the hardest part about this building was the sharp geometric shapes took
Right.
a lot of rendering. So
Sure.
basically like it looked like a spaceship docked on like Nate, and it was just like all sustainable materials.
Right.
So yeah, it was great because I never did anything like that. And it was probably like all the techniques that I learned, I'm still using now. Like
Yeah.
you said with Photoshop,
Exactly.
Illustrator,
Everything.
that was probably the one thing I liked about college because it forced us to use these tools.
True. And just engaging that, it was just nice to engage that design aspect of our brain,
Yeah.
because obviously it's helped us out now, which we'll get to.
Correct.
Super cool.
Correct.
I'm laughing because anyone who knows Kris at all, a spaceship building is 100% something you would do.
Spaceship.
Spaceship.
So yeah, like I other than college, definitely like, you know, meeting friends, really finding out who I really am, and just discovering like what I guess the question is what my purpose in life was. Oh, so what do you got there? Sorry, I just noticed you were eating. You're
Not to
making
interrupt
faces.
purpose of life with snacks, but I think these just changed my purpose in life. Because these are really good.
Nagaraya? Oh, so the flavor that I usually get is like original, which is just plain buttery, and this is adobo, which
This
is like,
adobo flavor. This is amazing.
is it actually really good?
It's so good.
So how I picked
So
out this
salty.
flavor,
Oh, it's so
Sorry?
salty. Good.
so salty.
Yeah.
How I picked out this flavor was I looked at all of them. There was a spicy one, there was a barbecue one, and adobo was like almost out. So I'm like, okay, this must be good if it's almost out. So
Wow.
so you got that one. I got this one is Calbee. Calbee, again, I have no idea. They look like yam chips right here.
Yeah. So Calbee or Calbee, this company has like another type of snack really similar to this called jagarigo, and it's like basically a French fry.
Oh,
And so this is just
yeah.
the yam version of it.
This is amazing.
Yeah, they're really
This
good.
is like oh man, this is like oversized hickory sticks, but dense.
What's the
Huh?
flavor in that one?
And this is just plain
Mm.
salt. It's so crispy. It's buttery. It literally feels like I don't know if you guys have had fire roasted yams,
Mm.
but basically like it feels like it tastes like that. Sorry.
Really?
Wow.
When Joy and I were in Japan a couple years ago, we were in Harajuku, and there was a Calbee store where they were making these fries fresh. But the line was so long, we couldn't even bother. It was so long.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
So,
Man, I would love these fresh. That's up there. This is like, I think this just took #1 spot.
Did it? These are so good.
I can't believe that. That was the
Oh.
one I was worried about.
Also, what's on the inside?
Peanuts.
Mm-mm. Peanuts on the inside.
Yeah.
What's on the
And
outside?
it's got like the outside is almost like a cracker.
Yeah.
Like it's like a pastry cover.
It's crazy crunchy.
Yeah. It's really good.
So good. Mm.
I can finish a whole bag in one sitting. Sorry, this is like we're eating dry snacks.
I know. It's all good. I got water too. So
yeah, we're covering 10 years, man.
I know. It's a lot.
So with me meeting Colleen,
more snacks.
how did you, like, obviously you met Joy, the love of your life, over there as well. And I know you told me this. It's a little bit of, for me, the timeline is back and forth, Edmonton, Vancouver.
Yeah.
Can you like tell us kind of about what happened, like how you met Joy, of course?
Yeah. So I was in Vancouver. There's a lot of back and forth that happened between Vancouver and Edmonton. So I won't go over like every single move, but I moved back and forth from Edmonton to Vancouver probably like 4 times for different reasons. So after school, came back because it was cheaper to live at home than it was to live in Vancouver. Then I moved there for work. And that's actually where I met Joy, was I worked with her. And it's really ironic because 3 months after we started dating, she was offered a position to work in Edmonton. And so ironic, like the place I was born and raised and grew up, Edmonton, the place that I just moved from, basically, she had been offered and accepted a position in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
She actually moved while we were still dating. I was living in Vancouver and Joy was living in Edmonton, which is really crazy to think about because we had only been dating for a few months. So it was like a really short time frame. Like, and when you think about it, like most relationships at 3 months, it's like, you know, you're just figuring things out. Like I easily could have been like, okay, well, you know, this isn't the one, this isn't going to work. You know, we'll have to like move on.
Yeah.
But we stayed together for just a couple months and I made the decision that, you know what, like I need to move back to Edmonton so I can be with her. And so I actually moved back to Edmonton and we lived together in Edmonton for a couple of years. You and I still were not talking at that point. And so like, you had no idea this was happening. Like we weren't in connection at all. Like I had no idea what you were doing. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had moved back. And so the 2 years were up. She finished working. And so she was originally from Vancouver and we wanted to move back. And so we did. Sold everything in Edmonton, moved back to Vancouver. We lived in a couple little places. We lived in her family house for a while, in the basement, rented there. We lived in another basement in Vancouver. We lived in an apartment in Surrey. Like we moved around quite a bit. But one of the major reasons for us moving to Surrey at the time was that it was a bit cheaper and we needed a bigger place because Joy got pregnant and we had our son, which is pretty crazy. So there's obviously a lot of time in between all that. It was about 5 years. So obviously a lot went on, but that's sort of the gist between, you know, Joy and I. It was just, it's just kind of crazy that it worked out and that we stayed together through, you know, all that moving and all that chaos, especially since, again, we had just met basically when she had to move away. So it would have been really sad if we didn't make it happen because of like the position we're in now is amazing. So we ended up having our son Ezra in Surrey, Vancouver area, basically, living in that apartment. I was working downtown Vancouver, and this part of the story is hilarious. Like it really cracks me up actually. And I don't want to move too far ahead. So before I do that, before I get there, I want to get another snack.
Okay.
And then I want to flip the question around back to you. because I want our timelines to sync up. And there's some stuff that happened during my time with Joy back and forth that was
Yeah.
going on for you that I want to talk about. So
Sure. Oh, Chippy.
next up is Chippy. It is barbecue flavor, which is delicious. And you got...
I'm going with, they're starting to get smaller. So this one is, yeah, none of this doesn't have anything English either. Okay, wasabi.
It's wasabi.
Wasabi. Oh, this is spicy?
Might be.
Oh, crap. All right. So wait, what is it? It's a seaweed snack?
I don't know.
I'll let you know. So how is Chippy?
Chippy's good. It's an interesting flavor. So this is labeled as barbecue. And
Yeah.
I think people in North America would be confused by the flavor. Because barbecue has a very like, almost like a heavy flavor. Like a very heavy barbecue flavor. Where this doesn't.
It's like smoky, isn't it?
It's more smoky, more subtle, saltier, definitely less barbecue. Like if you were to like lick some barbecue sauce, like that's what some North American like barbecue snacks taste like.
Correct.
Much more emphasized on the actual chip itself, which is really good. It's kind of like a, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like a tortilla chip, but less crunchy. It's like a little bit more, not flaky, but falls apart a little bit easier. It's really good though. I like the subtle flavor because I don't like barbecue. I don't like barbecue chips at all.
That one I wasn't sure because whenever we have Chippy, I believe that's the original flavor. Like I've never
barbecue.
I never recall it being ever like original because I always see the red bag. That's whenever I think of Chippy.
If you didn't tell me, or if I didn't see it was barbecue, I wouldn't have thought barbecue at first.
I guess that's a Filipino's way of saying this is barbecue style here.
Maybe.
So it's different.
It's good. Really good. So,
how many snacks do you have left, by the way?
4.
I have, right now, if I eat this one, I have 4 left.
Okay,
so I'll let you ask your question, and then I'll eat this one.
So while I was in Vancouver, we still weren't really communicating at that point. We had gone our separate ways. Our solo missions were, in the thick of things. We were doing our own thing. But there was something really interesting that's going to be really, really important in the next couple questions here that I want to touch base on. You had really gotten into Lego while I was gone. Like not just into Lego as like this is a fun toy to play with, and like we used to play with it all the time. You used to design crazy cool like Bionicle and like mech style figures. Super awesome. Always really ambitious with it too. I remember actually at one point you had designed it was going to be a giant robot.
Yeah.
And you worked on it for so long, and you only had the foot. It was like this big, and it was like a foot. And like I was like, oh my god, if that's just the foot, this thing's gonna be 8 feet tall. It was crazy. Yeah. But yeah, during that time, you seem to have gotten into Lego a little bit more, or a lot more. And I don't know where the transition happened, where the decision was made, but you founded a nonprofit organization called Aimbot.
Correct.
Tell me about that. Like, how did you get into Lego that heavily to the point where you wanted to do something like that? It's like a really interesting choice.
So with me getting into Lego, this would have been before the Lego movie took place. That would have been back in 2015.
Okay.
So I was working for an architectural firm, and we were doing custom design houses for the Oilers. Probably one of the most funnest projects, like houses I've ever worked on. And I'm in the philosophy of sometimes you have to do what you hate in order to figure out what you love.
Fair.
So I remember sitting in this empty room, like it's basically like a loft space. And the way that this architectural firm was laid out was there's 3 of us sitting in the front, and we're all the seniors. And then our manager is a desk directly behind us. And the entire floor is empty. There's nothing here. It's a big, maybe 2,000 square foot floor. Our main floor is amazing. It's gorgeous. It's where we show all of our clients. This is like the future. Upstairs, it's empty, blank with just tables.
They spent all their money downstairs?
Yeah, basically. And then just a bathroom with no roof. So the bathroom had no roof, so you can hear everything that happens. And I found out that out on the
It just
there's no ceiling. It's just up and out.
Oh god.
So basically it's 4 walls and like a door. So I found out that everybody in this firm, everyone had headphones. I found out the first week that that's why. I was just like, great, I have to. So then doing that, I remember this would have been Christmas, where my cousins asked me to come over and we built Lego together. And my cousins got into this thing called, I remember it, it was a Lego Chima product that my sister gave them for Christmas. And I built it with them. And I didn't know pieces like that existed. I was hooked. I was just like, wow, Lego has come so far. So then I had this random idea. I want to work for Lego. Like, how do I do this? So while I was working at the architectural firm, I would just spend time looking it up. What would I be doing in Lego? And I came across a Lego designer position. So I saw this, and crazy enough, I actually contacted a Lego designer who Colleen and I bought a Lego set, my very first Lego set. It was the Palace Cinema. Okay. So we bought this Lego set, we built it together, and ironically, this intern designed it. And he was 16 years old. I think I came across an article saying that he's the youngest intern. So I emailed this kid, right? I'm 25 at the time, and I emailed this kid and I said, hey, how do I get to work on Lego? I didn't think he would reply. But he did. He gave me a template. You have to do this, this, and this. So the 3 steps that he told me was you got to join a group. They're called LUGs, L-U-G, Lego Users Group. Yeah. You got to work for the Lego store. Find a way to work for a Lego store, whatever you can do, and then work on your portfolio. So then from that point, I started looking into documentaries. I made sure that I did all 3 steps. And then I came across, during my experience, I came across a group called NALUG, Northern Alberta Users Group. And that really was the start, because now it's real. I became part of the Lego community. And NALUG showed me that there are people that do this kind of stuff as a passion, as a hobby, as a passion, and the community is real. So then I went on to my first show, which I designed Metalbeard's Pirates, and I became more ambitious, kind of like bringing it back to what you said. I designed, on my first show, I realized something, that size sometimes may matter, right? And these guys were building gigantic buildings that were 7 to 8 feet tall.
Right.
And I built these tiny little guys, and people appreciated them, but I saw people's reactions on, I guess it would be called inspiration. They were inspired by these massive tall buildings that these guys were making. I wanted to feel that way. Right. So basically, going back to our childhood, I wanted to build a giant robot. Yeah. So it was very ambitious, if small guys going into something big. It was crazy. And during this time, Colleen and I had our own place, and I didn't have much Lego because a lot of it was going into actual stuff, real stuff, rent, car, necessity stuff. Yeah. So I spent the next 96 days building this giant robot, and I made a documentary out of it. But it wasn't necessarily the building of it. It wasn't really the end goal that I was focused on. I really enjoyed the process. Yeah. And this was me posting every day my progress.
Right.
And like I literally did work in progress. Like I go to work, and then build Lego at night. So then that's what I did. Like for 96 days, I built, and
Why do you,
not 96 days. It took me 96 hours, but 43 days.
okay.
Sorry. So 43 days, I built this giant robot.
How do you remember that it was 43 days?
Oh, because I did a journal. Like, so every day I would post something,
Yeah.
but in the span of 96 hours in total.
Right.
So I tracked it, but the cool part was people in the community, like the global community, was responding to it because they were following me. So a lot of the things that made me feel like I wanted to do something, this is where it led up to. When it was time for the show, The Giant Robot, I met somebody, and Logan and his mom, Allison, they were from St. Albert, and they came to our Lego show. It was the biggest Lego show back then. It would have been 2015, and it was my second show. And they came up to me and said, "Hey, is there a Lego club for like kids?" And as far as I knew, there wasn't. Like LUG is for adults, lugs are for adults.
Right.
So I figured I really wanted to share this feeling I got from the community and help inspire people. So funny enough, that when that first show took place, Allison and Logan asking, is there a place for my son to go?
Yeah.
I ended up doing school events following that.
Right.
So school started inviting me, hey, can you teach our kids how to build Lego?
Right.
And you put 2 and 2 together. That's how aimbot came to be.
Isn't that funny that Lego as a toy, you would assume, you just hear the word toy, that it's supposed to be marketed towards children, which I still think it is. It is definitely marketed towards a younger audience, but with the knowledge that old people are still going to buy it anyway. Adults are going to buy it anyway. And so it's really interesting that you found that, at least within our demographic, there wasn't like a user group or anywhere for like kids or younger adults, or people who weren't adults who could just go out and do Lego building with these people on their own. It's interesting you found that sort of niche. So you founded something called Aimbot. And what is Aimbot?
So Aimbot stood for Alberta Institute of Mentors and Builders of Tomorrow. Right. And basically, I wanted to create a group of mentors, and the builders of tomorrow would be the kids.
Right.
So at this time, while I was building all this Lego creations, I was working with Lego. Yeah. And just Lego philosophy and the community all together, I wanted to create Aimbot. And I wanted to create a home for kids who love Lego, and having adults use their knowledge and passion to pass it down to these kids.
For sure.
So that's why Aimbot was born.
That's so cool that again, you founded something for kids, and again, schools just started inviting you, and you basically saw the opportunity and created into this hugely successful nonprofit within the Lego world, which is pretty crazy, and sort of ties into a lot of how inspiration really works in the world, I guess. So you wanted to have mentors basically help inspire and guide our builders of tomorrow. And I think that transcends Lego. I don't think builders of tomorrow necessarily always will mean that they're going to be the next master builder, which we can talk about in a second. It's more about just having someone mentor them in a creative capacity, because they learn a lot. They learn about design, they learn about math, they learn about creativity, they learn about accepting their own way of doing things. Because you give 10 different kids the exact same Lego set and tell them to build anything, they all come out differently. It's crazy. It's one of the best parts about Lego. And so I think that inspiring the future generation is super important. And one of the ways that I guess sort of Lego tries to help in that manner is through the Master Builder program. Is that correct?
Right. Yep.
What is a Master Builder?
So that's what I guess the indie slang for it would be.
Okay.
But they're called Lego certified professionals.
Fair.
So by like terminology.
Yeah.
So these LCPs, they're basically like professional people who've taken a professional approach to Lego.
Right.
So these are the people that these kids aspire to, like in the Lego movie. They're the ones that we call master builders. So there are master builders that work for the Lego theme parks.
Yeah.
So those are called master Lego model builders. Whereas these guys are called LCP. Those are the people that we see in the real world.
Right. So like events, just for context, like when I was in Vancouver in Langley, there was a Toys R Us, and there was a master builder or a Lego certified professional there. His name was Robin Saylors, and I went and checked him out. And basically, he was building a giant creation. Basically, it's advertising for the Lego Movie 2, I believe it was. So it was this giant house, which was really cool. And Robin Saylors was at the time, the only LCP in Canada, correct?
Correct.
Did you ever get to work with him? What was your relationship with Robin?
Well, with Robin, it's funny enough that you say that, because like how I met Robin was I was in Seattle, and Robin was promoting an event called Brick Camp, which we have something in common with. But he and I were actually side by side. So when I went to this Lego event called BrickCon in Seattle, they had no place for me. I had this giant robot that had no place in the show because it was massive. They stuck me beside Robin. So Robin was close to the exit, and all weekend he was just looking at this giant robot, and he's like, "Hey man, you're making my build look bad." Like, so we just ended up like exchanging, and he's like, "Can you come to Vancouver and bring this to the show?"
Right.
So that's kind of how we met. And BrickCan was kind of like the major thing, but it's funny enough, after BrickCan, BrickCan was probably like my second biggest Lego event in Canada. After BrickCan, I got a tweet from Medicine Hat, and that was our first official event together, because I didn't know that Robin Saylor was going to be at that show. Right. So I texted him. I'm like, "Hey, are you going to Medicine Hat?" And he's like, "Yeah, I started that event." Well, I was like, "Well, Aimbot just got hired to go there." So that was our first one. And basically, like, we've been doing those kind of events together. So whenever I try to see him once in a while, like whenever he's in town, but meeting a mentor like him really helped me push for something more, right? And if he didn't invite me to BrickCan, I don't think several things would have not happened. Yeah. Right?
Signs and omens, right?
Signs and omens, yeah, that's right. If you guys haven't read The Alchemist, go for it.
The Alchemist is definitely awesome. Eat your seaweed, seaweed, wasabi, whatever.
Yeah, actually, before I get into this thing, because I'm scared, I was going to ask you, now, because we have a significant thing about BrickCan, I know that was one thing that you messaged me about, and you saw one of my creations from an article, and that was probably one of the first things that I remembered when we were talking again. Yeah. Right? Like, let me, like, can you kind of go into, like, what made you...
Yeah, you that, I'll elaborate. So, really interestingly, I was working in Vancouver, and I don't know what it was, but something sort of just made me look you up on LinkedIn. I don't know what it was. It had been almost 10 years. And I was like, I wonder what Kris is up to. Like, we spent a significant amount of time together, like in our childhood. So obviously, anytime I think about being younger, I always think about you. Like, there's just so much in my life that is the way it is because we knew each other, right? And so I work as a technical recruiter, and so I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So I just popped your name in, and it was really cool because what came up was Kris Manabo, president of Aimbot, and it was like basically said it was like a Lego group, a nonprofit. Sorry, and I was like, what the? I was like, really? And so like I looked up Aimbot and I went through the web page, and it was crazy. I was just like blown away that, you know, throughout all this time we hadn't talked to each other, that you ended up doing something which to me is so obviously Kris. Like making that choice is so obviously the right thing to do for you. Like it's like I can't believe it didn't happen like earlier, right? So it was really, really cool. And so that's kind of where I was getting with like inspiration. But to your point, I was also looking through the BrickCan website and looking at the events. Sorry, not the events. The postings of the mocks, my own creations, and the builds that were submitted, and specifically ships. So I really like robotic. I like robots. I like ships. That genre is really cool to me. Obviously, you share a similar passion. I knew that. Obviously, Gundam was a really big deal for us growing up. So it obviously all transitions together, which is really cool. But I was scrolling through these pictures, hundreds of photos, and I remember just stopping on one, and I was just looking at it, and like it like hit me, and I was like, this design is so like familiar, and not the design itself, but the style. And there was like a little card at the bottom, and I couldn't make it out. I can't. It's like a tiny little card. Like I can't see what it is in the photo. But I remember it so vividly. I'm pretty sure I saved that photo to my phone. And after I looked you up, saw that you were in Aimbot, and once we started talking again, I remember sending you this photo and being like, "Is this yours? Like, is this your creation?" And you're like, "Holy, like, yeah, that's mine. That's my ship." And it's just like such a crazy world that like thousands of pictures and like 10 years later, you can just that one thing just like reached out to me and like grabbed me, and it really helped bring us back together in like this crazy connection. And to bring it all full circle back to the inspiration side of things, I remember the first moment that I saw you were the president of Aimbot, a Lego nonprofit. It instantly inspired me to do something more like in my life at the time, which sounds really weird at that point, but it was just like, well, if Kris can do something so obviously Kris, which is do a Lego job in whatever capacity, like there's got to be more. Like I must be able to do more as well. And so that's the point that I decided to reach out to you, and just I remember, I think it was was it text or was it on LinkedIn? I don't even remember now. I might have been LinkedIn actually. And yeah, I just reached out to you, and that's how we reconnected after all that time. And everything you did over those 10 or whatever years it was led up to a moment that inspired me to reach back out to you and inspire me to create Only Together TV, my nonprofit, which is it's totally mind-blowing when you kind of think about it at the end of the day. But yeah, that's sort of like the dark ages of us, and we came back together at that point, and I was still living in Vancouver, you were still in Edmonton, and we were just talking on a daily basis, just like texting, like, what's up, like, what have you been doing, like, what are you doing now, blah blah blah, what is this, what is that, what is the whole other thing. Like it was crazy. What did you think? What were you thinking after all that time? All of a sudden, like, I just messaged you and was like, what's up? Like,
well, I think it was really good timing because like I think when you reached out to me, I would have been doing Aimbot for 3 years.
Yeah.
And when I started Aimbot, I had these milestones that I wanted to achieve. So first year, second year, third year, and sometimes they don't always go in order.
Yeah.
But you caught me at a time when I just finished one of my biggest milestones was to create my own Lego event. Right. That thousands of people can enjoy what I like. Yeah. And we called it Yego.
Yeah.
And you just caught me at a time where I was like, what's next? Right?
Just so everyone, if you're not from Edmonton, our 3-letter acronym for Edmonton International is YEG.
Yeah.
So it's called YEG a lot. And so Lego, Kris just added an O to the YEG and called it Yego. So anyway, just as a tidbit, if nobody knew that.
It's at Millwoods Town Center, and we'll see how this year goes. But we are definitely going to do something awesome this year. And yeah, just anyway, shameless plug for that one.
Things have happened. We'll get there.
things will happen. But yeah, you caught me at a time where I was asking, what's the next thing? And sometimes like I think I was hitting burnout at that time too. So like having somebody from my childhood, basically my best friend, reach back out, it felt like, and his story about inspiration and how what I created helped him create something awesome. It was like there's that signs and omen aspect of it. Yeah. And it's one of the premise of Aimbot is to make a positive impact on the world and in people's lives. Yeah. So obviously with Colin creating Only Together, that was a positive affirmation of full circle. Yeah. So like,
and really, like, you helped me so much because it was in the infant phase. It wasn't a thing. It was just an idea at the time. And we really went back on the text and like on the phone, because like I said, I lived in Surrey, so it was about 45-minute train ride into downtown Vancouver. Yep. And like there and back was pretty much just a phone call with Kris every day and talking about Aimbot, his plans with it, his goals for the future, my ideas on it. And then he helped me in terms of solidifying what Only Together is, how it could be incorporated, and what I wanted to do with my own nonprofit moving forward. So it was super cool. And it all sort of came together even more so because at this point we hadn't seen each other still. It still had been like 10, 11 years or something since we'd actually seen each other. And my wife and I had just had we didn't have Ezra yet, did we? Or did we?
You did.
Oh, we did.
Yep.
We did.
Yep.
Yeah, obviously we must have. So we had our son. We were still living in Surrey, but we came to Edmonton to visit my parents.
Christmas,
right?
Yeah.
And so we made it a mission to obviously meet up again, and we did. It was awesome. We like all hung out together, like Colleen, Joy, Kris, Colin, all together again. And it's funny because the Vancouver housing market, if nobody knows, is ridiculous. It's really expensive. It's hard to get into, and it's just ridiculously expensive. But Joy and I were looking at buying a place. Like we really wanted to buy a place in Vancouver, but we couldn't find anything but like terribly old townhouses out in like Langley, which is really far from my work. And so just like a funny, again, like sort of signs and omens. Kris, you were working for Sterling Homes.
Yep.
And you were in one of the show homes, basically. You had worked for them. You'd done a lot of architectural work for them.
Yep.
And I told you that we were looking, and you're like, well, I had borrowed a piece of video equipment from Kris. He helped me film Only Together's first episode.
Yes.
And it was a Rode microphone for a DSLR. And he's like, well, why don't you drop it off at the show home that I'm at before you guys leave? Because we were going to go, and the next day we were flying back to Vancouver or driving.
Yep. Yeah.
You're flying. Yeah.
Yeah, you were flying.
That night, Joy and I drove down to the show home you're working in, and we were like, man, this show home is so beautiful. Like, this house is so nice. Like, what a dream. It'd be great to have one of these in Vancouver. And like, you gave us a tour of it, and like, we looked at it, and like, then we looked at the price, and we were like, our jaws like hit the floor. We were like, man, in Vancouver, this is like easily a $2 million property, if not more, especially if it's in Vancouver.
Yes.
So that interesting moment where we weren't forced to come drop it off, but again, those signs and omens led us to that point to where we saw what we could get here. And that led to us having an actual serious discussion back in Vancouver about finances, investments, like what the best place to try and settle down in would be for our family. Obviously having a small child, like you want to be able to provide for them as well as you can also. And it led to the decision to actually move as a family from Vancouver to Edmonton. And so it all sort of came full circle, and it's just crazy the way things work out. And then obviously it led to a lot of other things between you and I, collaborations, and this thing called creator industries.
That's right. That's true. So before we jump into that, I'm
Yeah,
just going to do a quick review on this one.
sure. I
This
got
was
another
like
one.
the wasabi. So it's basically seaweed in tempura.
Okay.
And the flavor explosion is intense. Like
Really?
the wasabi just uppercuts you. And then the aftertaste is like seaweed. So it's so fishy. So basically I'm like confused. This is definitely okay. I can handle the spice. I'm okay with it. I feel like I'm eating deep fried tempura. It's basically tempura
Okay.
with nothing in it. So I kind of want to get some rice, like some
Ah,
rice with vinegar, and then put it with this. This is really good, but
it
it's
is good
not
as
my favorite.
is it crispy?
It's really crispy. It's crispy. It's oily. It's
If you like,
basically like seaweed and then batter it with tempura and then they fried it. So
it
it's
might be
just,
good like crumbled on top of something, like on top
yeah,
of
that's
a rice
exact.
dish. Might be
I'm
good.
gonna I'm gonna be having salmon balls tonight.
Oh, there you
So
go.
like rice and salmon mixed
Yeah,
in with mayo. So I'm gonna put some of that. That's really good.
I think
So
those are
thank
good.
you for that. What are you having?
I'm having yatos.
Yeah, there you go.
Jack and Jill brand cheese flavored potato crisps. So these are the thing I noticed with like maybe like more Asian like potato chips.
Yeah,
Like a North American potato chip is literally just a slice of potato fried into a
yeah,
chip. Where like a lot of the Filipino things that I've seen, Japanese things are more like this looks and tastes kind of like a crisper. Like it's not a chip, it's not a
yes, you're
cracker, it's
right.
a crisper. Like it has that a little bit thinner, but it's like a processed potato. I'm looking at potato and potato starch processed into like something and then formed, not
Yeah,
just like a slice of potato. But the cheese flavoring is really good. I like it because it seems like Filipino snacks they don't overplay the flavor too much. They like it's like subtle, so you can eat a lot of them. It's actually dangerous. Like my
D,
tongue,
you haven't even gotten to the other one. The other one's gonna be my favorite, but
we'll
that
get
is
there. But
terrific as well.
this Joy's gonna like this. I'm gonna give it a Joy after,
That's
and
good.
Andrew will like it too. But yeah,
So I did have a question
yeah,
for you. Like with you obviously like trans having to, basically pack up your entire life and move to Edmonton. Like I remember your dad telling me a stories about like how you guys were just driving up the mountains like with all your stuff in one truck,
yeah. My dad
and
helped me.
like there's anxiety there, but having to move your entire family to Edmonton from like a place where you've lived for so long, like Vancouver, like what was going through your mind? Like, like what are the conversations that you and Joy had prior to moving?
So that's a good question because a lot of it actually came down to Joy's side of things. So as I mentioned, obviously I was born and raised in Edmonton. My family is here, but Joy was born and raised in Vancouver. So me moving from Vancouver back to Edmonton is me moving to my family. So for me, it was never like a big hurdle. Obviously, there's a hurdle because I always wanted to live in Vancouver. It's a beautiful city, and I have a lot of friends from college there. Like that's why I moved back is to be with them, right? And so that was the main hurdle for myself was just leaving the friends that I'd moved there for, but also not forcing Joy, but moving Joy out of her family city. So that's the big thing. Like her family, her parents came to Canada um, a while ago. They're retired and back in Japan now, but they had formed like a Japanese school, a Japanese community center. They had bought a house there. They're super well established in the Japanese community. Um, Joy has a bunch of nephews there. Obviously, Joy's friends and Joy's sister, brother-in-law. There's just a lot there for Joy in relation or in yeah, like relation to what I actually have there is obviously a little bit less. So a lot of it came down to how she would feel about it. And so we were actually really lucky. Again, when you think about the entire process that happened, because she had been offered a job in Edmonton all those years before, Edmonton wasn't so foreign to her. She knew
Mm,
my parents. She has hung out with my family a lot. She knew the city well, and so it made it a lot easier for her to, I guess, um, like handle the situation and handle the anxiety of moving from one city to another. And I still think between the two of us, it's obviously a lot harder on her because she wants to see her sister, she wants to see her nephews. Our son being half Japanese, she wants him to grow up around other Japanese kids, and they literally have a school and cultural center for Japanese kids there, and so it would have been a perfect spot. They also have a lot to do with their religion based out of um, that center. And so it was just a really big decision to be able to make. But at the end of the day, it came down to financials and making a short term and long term plan for what we wanted. And so, short term, we wanted to be able to invest our money into some sort of housing so that we could build equity. And then long term to be more well off in that regard. And so when we looked at it, we would have had to live paycheck to paycheck and just barely getting by in a Vancouver terrible townhouse. Where when we thought about it and priced it out for Edmonton, we're able to get obviously a much nicer place, a lot more room. We're saving a lot of money. We're able to renovate and rent the basement to make extra income. And so really the decision came down a lot to financials. And so at the end of the day, like, the final thing was asking your parents, like, what do you think? Like, obviously, like they come to visit Vancouver a lot, they don't ever come to Edmonton. And so they said, whatever's going to make you guys happy, whatever you think is the right decision for you guys, like 100% go for it. Like, just make it happen. And so we came to Edmonton and you sold me a house.
and that's where he's filming right now.
That's where I'm filming right now. Exactly. So this is the culmination of many, many years of separate events all coming together into one. And really the epitome for us at this point now is moving forward with one of your other dreams, which is Creator Industries, right? Like
Yeah.
we mentioned it already. And so in your best, like what would you say that Creator Industries is?
Well, so when I created Aimbot, I had this offshoot dream of, look, Aimbot is for the people. Now what can I do for myself?
Right.
Oh, you're pulling out the sweet corn.
I just want to smell it. It smells good.
Like, Creator in itself was an evolution of an idea. So it started off with as simple as like a group of people called creators come together, and that would be how Aimbot and Creator would kind of form that symbiosis.
Yep.
So the kids that we're inspiring will become the creators of the future.
Fair.
So I wanted to create, like, what happens if these kids grow up? Like, when these kids grow up, what are they going to become?
Yeah.
So then I was thinking of Creator, something for them to aspire to. And now, like, with talking with Colin and how things turned out, it is a Lego-based studio where we do large-scale Lego events for the public. Yeah. And mainly right now we're based in Edmonton. And of course, Colin and I developed it together. And it was just one of those things where when we were talking about only together, he pushed me because I was pushing him. We both basically like sharpened each other. It's like a sword on stone, right? We both sharpened each other and we both pushed each other for our dreams. And now you have Only Together and Creator Industries together. Yeah. And basically we're in it together. Like, Creator Industries is the business side of things, and Only Together would be the charitable aspect of what we're trying to do. Right. So yeah, like in kind of summary, Creator Industries is basically that. We do large public events that our goal is to connect families and communities together with the help of Lego.
And I think Yeah, a really interesting point you made is like the symbiosis or the how aimbots ideology and creators are at its core quite different, because I think on the surface some people might be like, well, aimbot runs similar events as you guys. And I think the major point that you're trying to make is you're right. Aimbot was for the kids. Aimbot was, it's a nonprofit for like schools, small events, really getting hands on to be able to be face to face. But that becomes a mentorship for you, right? And so that's great. Obviously, mentorship is super important for a lot of people, and it's really fulfilling. But I think from the conversations that we had, the aspect you were missing was your specific creativity and ability to be able to build yourself was lacking. You were going to less shows in terms of Kris, the creator, and you were going more as aimbot the whole, and you were doing a lot of jobs basically as aimbot the mentors, and a much less of Kris, the creator, the Lego designer. And so I think, if I'm not mistaken, creator was a way to help fill that void, I guess, because during creator industries events, we make crazy stuff. It's awesome. Like we make big, cool Lego designs, which really sets apart sort of the tone, and allows you to be a lot crazier. Because if anyone knows you, again, your ideas are outside the box and in another universe, and they're huge and they're big scale, and like you always want the biggest, craziest event. And I don't think that the aimbot model was allowing for that, but we really worked hard to allow creator industries to provide that for you specifically, and really make a really unique and interesting company to provide a lot for the community, which is super, super cool.
With creator, it's almost like I'm happy that I have a really awesome team to have my back. And this is going to be like, I'll share a story that really kind of shows how strong we are. Hold on. Don't put that chip in your mouth. Hold on. I'm just kidding. No, that's a habit. But yeah, like creator is, for me, as selfish as it sounds, it's an outlet for me to do all the crazy fun things that's stored up in my head and share it to the world, right? And just have everybody have fun.
Mm-hmm.
So before I share my story, how is that? You got sweet corn?
I got sweet corn. So
this one.
As soon as I opened the bag, I immediately thought corn pops. The cereal.
Yeah.
And the texture and the underlying flavor is like a corn pop. It's kind of crazy. It's just a much bigger
It's not like, is it cereal? Does it taste like corn pops?
It kind of does.
Okay. This is not to be eaten with milk. You're not supposed to.
I wouldn't. It's a little less dense than a corn pop, because corn pops were meant to be in milk, obviously.
Yeah.
This is more airy. It's good though. Good flavor.
What kind of flavor is it? Like, can you describe it?
Yeah, it's sweet. I would say buttery is probably the leading flavor. So you get it in your mouth, and you get an initial hit of sweetness. You get a really, but after you swallow it, like the very back of your tongue, it feels buttery. It has like a very buttery taste to it.
Nice.
It's really good.
You like that?
Yeah.
I think it's out of
corn pops.
It says that one hits a sweet spot for me, because my grandma like sells it at her corner store. And it was that was the one thing I always remember sneaking into her place and just grabbing those from her, just like, hey grandma, thanks, bye. Like, it's just so good. So like, obviously with creator, kind of going back with everything, we had a bit of a rough, crazy start. Like, I mean, crazy is not the right word to use, but it's just like,
it was definitely
yeah, there was a lot of things that happened with our first show, right? Because like, kind of transitioning over, now that we had the idea of creator, what did we have to do? And we had our first event at Londonderry Mall. And it was called Winter Build Days. And during that time, I got sick, and we had we were working with Robin Sather. We had a lot of moving parts. because Lego Canada was helping us out with this event.
Yeah.
And in this whole time frame, I basically left everything to you. And I'm like, hey, like I had to step back because I was unable to help you. So like having all that on your plate, you moving to Edmonton, like I can't even imagine how much pressure you were under, because like what was going through your mind when like leading up to the events of Creator, our first show, and having to deal with just, you know, like a new job, a new life, that must have been a bit stressful.
I think that I think a really interesting point about people is that thinking about stressful situations is more stressful sometimes than going through it. And I think
Right.
diving just head first into something is sometimes just the best choice, or doing something when you don't have a choice almost is better, because then you don't overthink it. So at the time we were looking and purchasing our first place, we were getting Creator Industries started from the ground up. We were working with Lego Canada, Robin, and all of our partners and sponsors for Winter Build Days.